value that this podcast is bringing, it's captured during the recording. It's not in the distribution. I've invested in at least 2, maybe 3 opportunities that have been talked about from people that have come on my show.
Can you give me a more specific example of how the podcast has led to a business relationship?
So,
Dr. Matt Markel, engineer, to executive roles like CEO, CTO, and president, and then later wrote Antipreneur. His podcast, Thrive and Achieve, continues that same idea.
Main benefit for me has been the relationships, the friendships, the business opportunities for me that have come directly from the show. Make sure that you build a system where each episode can churn so that basically every hour that you're spending on the show pays multiple dividends on that. It's probably not going to make you millions of dollars. If you're trying to do it to support your idea, business, book, think long and hard about.
All right, Dr. Matt, what exactly is an antipreneur and how does it pertain to your podcast?
It is kind of a weird name, isn't it? So the genesis of this name came from, I was brainstorming ideas for something, like what I was going to do next in my career with some folks, and they were trying to push me down the path of starting my own business right away. And I wasn't ready. I was working in corporate America. I'd been a C-suite exec. That's what I was really enjoying. I wanted to go back and do that just in a different role. They were trying to push me to be an entrepreneur, and it wasn't resonating with me because I really see the world through the lens of basically corporate America. And I came up with the term right there. I was like, guys, I'm not really like an entrepreneur. I don't think like that. I'm more of an antipreneur in the sense of like an anti-hero, which is someone who does it sort of differently. So I use the skills of entrepreneurship, like fiscal management, cash flow, balance sheets, things like that, as I run my personal life and my own finances. But I see it through the lens of a professional, of a practitioner, of an expert working for a company. So that's what an antipreneur is. I'm not against entrepreneurs at all. Most of my friends are entrepreneurs, actually. But the idea is really a nod to the 93 million professionals that are in our country today, in the United States today. It's basically saying, like, you can achieve wealth without having to throw everything away and start your own business. There's many people that have done that. And you may not know the way, but we can show you the way. Wealth is a teachable skill. So we can help you with that. And that's what we ended up building this whole brand ecosystem and program around, was helping ambitious professionals thrive in their career and achieve financial success. And that's actually the tagline to our podcast. Our podcast is called Thrive and Achieve, for thrive in your career and achieve financial success. It's professionals helping professionals. And we bring on a lot of really great people to do that. But it's the concept of antipreneur is someone who's building the wealth like someone who's trying to be an entrepreneur would do, but doing it while working for a business.
Okay, so people were trying to push you to do entrepreneurs type stuff. You didn't think you thought like that. You must thinking there must be a different way. And so you've kind of thought of the idea of the antipreneur and started going down that path. How does that pertain to your podcast exactly?
So the podcast, that's a great question, by the way. So in the ecosystem of things that we have, right? We have the book Antipreneur, which became an Amazon #1 bestseller. This is the framework. This is the philosophy. And then we give an update to that framework and philosophy every week in our newsletter, the Antipreneur Insider, which if you go to anti-preneur.com, Antipreneur is always spelled with a dash in it. If you go to that website, you can sign up for our free newsletter, which is, again, more of the philosophy and the framework with an application every week. But the podcast, that's the real world implementation. That's where we bring on people who are actually doing it. I bring on other people that have been successful in their career, other executives or investors. Yes. I bring on a lot of people that do a lot of investing like me. I bring on communication experts, people that have done keynote speeches on, I think, 5 or 6 continents. One of the guys that teaches how to really deliver an impactful speech, I think, has delivered keynote speeches on 5 or 6 continents. I bring on communication experts. I brought on
brought
a former actress who now teaches how to own an audience, how to really control the room. And a lot of finance professionals, and not just finance professionals that are doing the run of the mill finance, but guys that focus on specific facets of personal finance, whether that be uh, specialty risk protection for high net worth individuals, or later stage people in their careers that may have not saved enough, how they can still have a decent retirement, to folks doing specialty deals like structured notes, et cetera. So, so a lot of those folks. And I'll tell you, Kenneth, these are the conversations that I'm having with folks now that I wish I could have been listening to 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago. Because it really helps when you see people talking about how they're doing it. It creates this whole ecosystem around the brand and around the lessons and insight and information we're trying to share and trying to bring forward with people to really help them reduce their stress in their career and the stress related to their finances and financial life.
So is it fair to say it's like case studies of examples of entrepreneurs, or am I reading that correctly, or is it a little bit different?
It's a combination of hearing from other entrepreneurs and hearing from people that can help entrepreneurs, right? So for example, the actress that talked about speaking and engagement and how to own an audience. Well, she has her own business, so she's not really an entrepreneur.
Okay.
She's a kind of a solopreneur, so she's maybe on the border. But the thing is, she has skills that can help people in corporate America. So actually, that's a lot of her clientele. So the skills that she teaches are applicable to people that might be getting ready to deliver a message to the executive leadership team or to the board of directors. So, and I'll tell you, I wish a lot of the people, so I've been on executive teams and C-suite teams and stuff for quite a while. I wish a lot of the people that ended up briefing us had listened to her lessons, because it would have made it a lot easier for us, because they would have known how to create the material in a way that we could easily digest it and we could go a lot quicker. They're less nervous. We're less nervous for them. So it would have just been a lot better. So it's both entrepreneurs and those that have skills that they can teach people to be better entrepreneurs.
Okay. I think I'm seeing it better. You mentioned that this is something that you wish you had when you were younger. You wish you had this information, wishing to be able to listen to these things and apply them. And that's ultimately the goal for the podcast. Am I correct?
Right. The theme of the show, and we keep coming back to this every episode, we start with this and end with this. It's professionals helping professionals thrive in their career and achieve financial success. So it's all geared towards that. I don't do things that are just people selling stuff. People might have a new book to talk about, whatever. That's a small part of it. It's the lessons and the insights from that really are the core of the show. A gentleman was on our show recently who has a very interesting product, and he's fundraising for that. Well, the amount of time we talked about his fundraise was maybe 25 seconds, 26 seconds, something like that. The rest of it was the practical applications of the insight that he had that he was bringing to the audience.
What other benefits are you seeing from the podcast? So you're putting this out, you're giving this information out to people who could be useful for. Where do you see the podcast helping you specifically?
So the way it helps is on multiple fronts. One, we see the number of views, the number of downloads and so forth continuing to grow over time, which is a good sign. That's a good metric. But I'll tell you, the main benefit for me has been the relationships, the friendships, the business opportunities for me that have come directly from the show. we make a lot of short form clips and other educational content that we repurpose as well. So that's another thing that it adds. But it's helped me a lot in relationships. I have done business deals with multiple people that have been guests on my show. And I've introduced people that have been on my show to others in my network that have ended up doing deals of some sort with them. So it's really a great way. This content creation as a form of networking is really a fantastic idea because you get to spend 45 minutes, an hour, or whatever with a person really talking about things that benefit them, creating content that can serve both of your needs, and building a strong relationship. You're on somebody's show, that's something special. That's a relationship that you'll have forever. It's like, oh yeah, I was on Kenneth's show. Eli was on my show. Those are things. It's a special bond and a special relationship that you'll have, and it's really a fantastic ROI for the relatively short amount of time you spend engaging with that. So for me, the engagements typically take the form of they'll do initial reach out to me, or I'll do a reach out to them. We have a quick meeting. Then we structure the questions. We do all our questions ahead of time so that we can be very focused and maintain the arc of the show that we want to create. Then we do the recording, the editing, processing, etc. So, but the whole amount of time that you're with a person, maybe a couple hours, yet the bond that you have from that is just incredibly strong.
So repurposing content and mostly being able to network and build relationships. Can you give me a more specific example of how the podcast has led to a business relationship?
So I don't want to use names, but I've invested in opportunities that I've invested in at least 2, maybe 3 opportunities that have been talked about from people that have come on my show. The people that have come on my show have introduced them to others that have helped me either in creating additional content or reviewing the next course and product that we're getting ready to launch, or in some way, shape, or form helping me, or just being someone in the Rolodex that I can call to bounce an idea off of. So it's really, the one thing I would hazard against saying is, like, don't go into every podcast thinking like, all right, what's this going to end up as? What's this relationship going to look like? How am I going to benefit from it? If you do that, it's not going to work for you. Go in thinking about nothing but giving. Imagine like your whole purpose in all this is just to give. And actually, when I'm the host, that's what I focus on. Is I don't really talk about me very much. I'll add in some insights that I have along the way to make sure the conversation stays interesting. But really, it's mostly about shining the light on the guest. I was on someone's show once, and I think I didn't talk on the podcast for the first 6 minutes of the show, other than like hey, it's great to be here. Like they introduced me, so we'd like to welcome Dr. Matt Markel. I was like, hey, it's great to be here. So nice to be on your show today. And then he asked a question and started answering it himself and went on and on about this answer. And I kept thinking, like, and do I get to talk? Am I supposed to talk in this? Am I just, I'm not that good looking, so I'm not, I'm not like a supermodel or anything where like, hey, the draw is, come see, Cindy Crawford or something like that, and then really it's just him talking. Yeah, I'm not that. So I don't know what am I here if I'm not going to talk. So I decided very early on that the focus of the show was going to be to shine the light on someone else. But his was just an example of the wrong way to do it. Yeah, I don't think I talked for the first 6 minutes of that show. It's like, what's going on here? That's not what I wanted to do. So by shining that light and really looking for just how can you help them, that will unlock doors for you. You might not know exactly how it's going to play out, but if you go in thinking about like, I'm going to get something out of this, wrong, bad idea. But think about how you're going to give, and it will really, really pay dividends.
Okay. So you've had some deals, no names.
Right.
Big focus is to shine the light on your guests, letting
Right.
them talk instead of being the center of attention, and generally bringing value to them with no real mission to get anything from them, because in time that relationship will likely build something towards value both ends.
Exactly. I mean, they're already giving me something, right?
Yeah.
The mission I have is to help professionals.
Mm,
And part of that mission is carried out through the education and insight from the podcast. Well, they're now part of the way that facet of the mission gets executed, gets accomplished. So they're already giving me something. They've
yeah.
agreed to spend their time to come on my show. And then, of course, we all promote it, afterwards. We all share on our social, talk about it to friends, family, colleagues, etc. So they're already doing something for me just out of the gate. They're
The-
agreeing to spend their time to help me with my mission to help professionals.
I agree. I agree. What's been a big bottleneck for you in the podcast so far? Anything come to mind?
So the things that are not the bottlenecks for me are the things that I thought might be issues in the beginning. So the what's not an issue for me is editing. But I do all the editing myself because I like to have full creative control over it, and it just helps me get a lot closer to the material. Plus, I repurpose a lot of the material for my writing um, on LinkedIn and other platforms. So by editing it myself, it gives me another chance to really be immersed in the material and be able to pull out the real good nuggets of that. So the recording, easy, editing, manageable. It's the marketing that's the biggest bottleneck on things.
Mm,
There is so much content out there today, and even there's so much good content that
mm,
it's hard to get discovered and hard to get people's attention. Um, so that's been one of the biggest things. So we rely on the guests helping us. We do a lot. One of the things we started really leaning into a lot recently is the short clips. Using the shorts, posting lots of those on YouTube and on different platforms on social media as well. Because when you think about it, the even a show like what we're doing right here, we're like maybe 17 or so minutes in. The there's there's several probably nuggets of what we've
mm.
talked about that are really good takeaways. The rest of it is an interesting conversation. So if you have time to listen to an interesting conversation, then watch the whole show. I'm witty, I'm bright, it's a lot of fun. I make jokes along the way. So so watch if you want, if you got time for that, watch the whole show. But if you just want the essence of it, the nuggets, the real takeaways, you watch one of the shorts. And those are doing really well. Those are doing far better than the actual long form podcasts. And it's kind of cool too, because each podcast can produce many of the shorts. So that's just one of the ways we're pivoting now on the marketing, is really leaning in hard into that. So, but yeah, that's the thing, is the marketing and the distribution is the hardest part for me. That the recording is fun. The recording actually for me is a lot of fun. I have a great time while I'm doing it. It's so much fun to try to pull interesting things and insights out of the guests while still shining the light on them. That to me, I could do that all day long. That's just a really a grand time for me. And recording and editing, like I said, those are all manageable. The editing is all manageable. It's the marketing and distribution that's the bottleneck.
Okay. Recording, fun, marketing, bottleneck. And you said that you pivoted towards more shorts.
Right.
How often and where are you posting these shorts?
So a new short comes every weekday on YouTube. That's what we're
Okay.
doing now. And in addition, that short is also reposted on the Meta platforms, on Instagram and on Facebook. LinkedIn's a little bit of a different animal, so you have to be really, really selective in what you post as a video on LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn is becoming much more video centric over time. As a matter of fact, I think by the end of this calendar year, you'll see probably maybe a 3x or 4x amount of video content on LinkedIn vice the standard graphic and caption posting. But that audience is different. That audience is not the one step up from TikTok like you see on Facebook or Insta. They're much more cerebral, much more business people looking at things. So making sure that you have the tight format that is basically business friendly, that takes a lot of work, and that takes a little bit more. So we don't post on LinkedIn every day because we make sure that everything that we post on LinkedIn is just of the highest quality and in keeping with the theme of that platform.
Okay, that makes sense. Once a day to YouTube, and for the meta platforms, LinkedIn, more picky choosy because of the platform itself, but looks to be more so of that video stuff coming to LinkedIn throughout the year is what you're thinking is going to happen.
Right. So what we're going to be heading next is we're going to be starting to identify the key clips that maybe can be re-edited or retightened a little bit for LinkedIn and starting to put those out. What we've historically done is I'll take a podcast and boil down maybe one or two really solid teachable lessons from that podcast. Okay. And then we'll write an extensive LinkedIn post on that, probably with some infographic that is usable for someone, whether they ever listen to a moment of the podcast or not. So that's what we do is, boil it down, write a insightful, teachable post with a useful infographic, and then work the concept of the podcast into the post itself. So that's what we typically do on that. So that gets a lot better traction. That's get a lot more impressions than what we were originally doing. Last year was the posts that were like, "Hey, I've got a new podcast. My guest is Kenneth. Come listen to it. It's really good. You'll like it. We talk about business and money and stuff." So and using the actual thumbnail from YouTube as the graphic for that. Well, those did terrible. Those did terrible. And rightly so, because it looks just like it's an ad for a podcast.
Yeah.
People don't really resonate with that. But you put a teaching moment out there, like, "Hey, I'm going to learn something." So we've got something coming out the next week on how the 4 F's will sabotage your thinking. And those are fight, fawn, freeze, and flee. So basically, when we are under stress, we will exhibit some combination of those 4 behaviors. You've heard of fight or flight before. Well, there's 2 others as well. There's the freeze and a 4th one called fawning, where you basically just spend all your attention on something. You're worried about something, so basically that occupies all of your time, all of your thoughts to an unhealthy excess. So we're going to be talking about that. Well, that was one of the things we talked about on a show we taped recently with a guest of mine who teaches how to deal with those 4 F's to keep them from sabotaging you. So it was basically a way to work in what we talked about on that show with the teaching lesson and an infographic that lists out those 4 F's and how to identify them. So really, that's what we typically do on that. And we're going to be pivoting to do that, and because those still do very well, and the short videos, which I think you're seeing more and more play on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that infographic tie-in idea for LinkedIn, I think, is really nice. Might have to try it myself.
Yeah, look at my LinkedIn feed, the Matt Markel on LinkedIn. You can see plenty of examples of that.
Will do. What is something you wish you knew when you started your podcast?
We all have some aspect of imposter syndrome, right? The even people that have been, I've been C-suite executive in multiple companies. I've been very blessed to be able to do very well financially. You still start thinking like, oh, who am I to do a podcast? That's for like real professionals. I don't know anything. Um, I wish I knew how much fun I would have doing this. Full stop. That's the number one thing I wish I knew. Wish I knew how much fun I would have doing this. I've met incredible people. Many of my guests, like I mentioned, have become real friends as well as business colleagues on things. The conversations themselves have been energizing, intellectually rewarding, and just I feel so good afterwards. You know, we're I could take all the people that have been on my show and all those that I've been on theirs, and it's kind of this cool community network sort of thing. I could call up anybody who's been on my show. I could call them up, right now and say, "Hey, I need help with something," and they'd be like, "Yeah, give me 3 minutes. I got to wrap this up, and I'll give you a call right back."
Mm.
Or yeah, I'm good. Let's talk. And anybody that's been on my show that calls me, same thing. Yeah, I'm taping a show right now with my friend Kenneth. Give me, I don't know, like 5, 6 more minutes. We'll wrap this up and then I'll give you a call right back. That's the way it would work. It's a network, it's a community. It's really a great group of people that we've met doing this project. I had no idea it would be so much fun and such a way to really build relationships with people.
I agree with that. I personally, at this point, have only recorded 2 episodes, and I wouldn't say I have imposter syndrome, but I would say I also feel that sentiment that is more fun than I thought it would be. It's simpler than I thought it would be, and there's a lot of valuable information and so far relationships that have come of it. So I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, and just a plug to Riverside right now, since we both use that platform. That
Yeah.
makes things, for what's it cost for a year? $300, something like that. Well worth it. Well worth it. The platform is solid. The editing capabilities are solid. You auto host straight from there. It's really, maybe if I was Joe Rogan or something like that, I'd look at something else, but easy to get it set up, easy to use, and very affordable. I don't know if the people uh, that were doing shows maybe 5 years ago had those sorts of tools. It was probably a lot more complicated. But for us, it's easy. Credit card, subscription, away you go.
Final question. If you were talking to another expert who wanted to get into podcasting to support their idea, their business, their book, what advice would you be dying to give them right now?
So, first of all, be crystal clear on what you're trying to get out of this podcast. But it's probably not going to make you millions of dollars. It's probably not going to cost you millions of dollars either, but it's not going to make you millions of dollars. Not, at least most likely not. And if you're trying to do it to support your idea, business, book, new product, whatever, think long and hard. Going back to what I said earlier, think long and hard about how the marketing for this show is going to help that, right? Because you've got a book that's marketed through book channels, for example. It's all on Amazon, and you can talk about it at events if you're doing speaking events or whatever. So you're talking about that there. But now, if you want to use the podcast to support the book, you have to market the podcast as well.
Mm.
Otherwise, it's just talking in a vacuum. So you need to think about, how do I get that out there? And then the money and time and effort I'm spending marketing this podcast, would that be better spent just marketing the book in the first place? Or maybe you don't even worry about whether the podcast is successful or not. You're just doing it for the relationships that you can make with people. So maybe somebody who might be interested in the book for a corporate sale or so. Well, maybe I could have them on my show. And I've done this you know, on my show even a few times. Like, people that could be interested in this as something that would help them in their business with sales of the other thing. Then you bring them on and talk to them there. But you have to think about, how does the show actually do that? In that case, the relationship which is formed during the recording is the value. It's not in the distribution afterwards. No one, you're gonna end up, no one watches the show, but the fact that you recorded something together and and have a relationship and built a level of trust, that might have been the whole goal in the beginning. So I do a lot of strategic advising for businesses, and one of my clients was, I was talking to them about, they have a podcast as well, and they were really, really working hard about a lot of production, spending a lot of extra overhead and money on production fees. And I was like, you guys, the value that this podcast is bringing, it's captured during the recording. It's not in the distribution and the production afterwards. The value, once you're done recording, you've captured most of the value that you're getting because you built that relationship with somebody that then you're going to be able to sell your products to. So think about that. Think about that strategy. What are you really going to use it for? How are you going to market it? How are you going to get the value out of it? Is it in the recording and the relationships, or just in the audience? Because like we said, there's a lot of stuff out there. So you can't just like put it out there and like people will auto magically find it. It's not going to work like that. And then the other thing I would say is make sure that you build a system where each episode can churn the clips, the posts, the newsletter content, the teaching content, whatever, so that basically every hour that you're spending on the show pays multiple dividends on that. And I guess the final thing would be really focus on quality over quantity on the guests. That's one of the things I've been very, very blessed and fortunate, is like I've had really, really great people that have either volunteered or said yes when I asked to come on the show. So it's not like anybody who just asks will be on the show. They have to fit a very restrictive set of criteria to come on the show, because again, professionals helping professionals thrive in their career and achieve financial success. That's what we're trying to do. If their message, if they're what they're wanting to talk about doesn't support that, it's not a fit. Even if it's, the president of the United States. So no, not actually if the president called, I'd probably let him on the show. But in the unlikely event that would happen, but really doesn't matter how famous they are, they've got to fit the mold for the show. Otherwise, it doesn't really help you.
All right. Be crystal clear on what the podcast is for.
Exactly. And how it's going to help you achieve your goals.
Right. This has been great. Thank you, Dr. Matt.
It's my pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk with you, Kenneth.
This has been the Founder Podcast Lab. See you in the next episode.